Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome back to another 3PL Live Sessions show with Michael Sternberg and myself, Cameron Robertson. Mike, how is your Friday going, man?
You know what? I think for the first time in like 2 weeks, I have like some open space in the calendar.
I know. I literally just said that to a client this morning. I'm like, oh, I have a couple hours today open, which is rare.
which means we have 50 hours of work to try to squeeze into that window because we've been back to back, right? But no, it's good, man. It's been a good week. How about you, man?
About the same, man. It's we accomplished a lot this week for the release, and we have the upcoming 3PL Live virtual user group meeting that we're preparing for. So a lot of cool stuff coming out there. And then, just prepping for next weekend. So going to take the family camping in Malibu. So
yeah, you're going to the same spot that I went last weekend, right?
Yep. Kelsey, my wife, got a spot last minute. Someone canceled, then she grabbed it. But otherwise, you have to wait like 6 months to get a spot there. It's crazy.
Yeah, Christina, when I told Christina, my wife, for those listening, I told Christina you guys got a spot that quickly. She was like, no, they didn't. Like, obviously, she didn't think you were lying, right? But she was like, what? Like, how the hell? So, yeah, I think we booked 5 months ago for when we went last weekend. You may have gotten lucky, too, though, because it's like the middle of the week, right?
It's July 4th weekend, though. You would think
that's
people
true. That's true. Probably just cancellation, like you said.
Yeah, that's what it was. We got notified of a cancellation, but yeah. Well, cool. Let's jump into it. So today we have a special guest. It's Mike Fullam. Mike Fullam, welcome to the stage.
How you doing, guys? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us how you got in logistics and what you're up to.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Mike Fullam. Started a business called Togo in 2021, and that's kind of evolved in a few different things. We can talk about that later. Just before I left college, I went to a career event and met with C.H. Robinson. And they said, do you have any interest in getting involved in logistics? I said, yeah, not knowing what logistics even meant. So then I had to go research what logistics meant. I ended up meeting with them, really good people. Started with them in 2008 and spent a little over 10 years with them. Started on the capacity side, the operations side, just learning the ins and outs of truckload freight. And then kind of evolved out of that into a more customer-facing role. And by the time I left, I was managing basically sales end-to-end for all of our modes and services, and then kind of mixing and matching them together to support whatever the customer needed. Really enjoyed it. I was involved in some global things, some really large companies, some small and innovative kind of startup companies. Learned a ton about it, but really wanted to test my skills at leadership. So I left there, I think in 2017 or 18, and I went to join a company called Reed TMS. I served on their executive team for about 3 years, pretty much doing everything under the sun, involved in freight brokerage and asset truckload. And then they were acquired by Werner. I'd left just prior to that and joined a friend of mine, Alex, who's on the team, to start Togo. And Togo's been growing ever since.
So 2 questions. First question, being that you had all this experience and, you did a bunch of different roles, what was your favorite part of working in the brokerage space? Was it the carrier sales operations? Was it strictly the customer facing sales part? Like, what did you enjoy the most?
The most fun I ever had in business was probably the very early days. When I was working with the carriers and I was sitting in a zone with a bunch of other booking reps. And, every day was a challenge. It was a team effort. It was very competitive, but fun. We're constantly throwing a football around the office. That was super fun. I do miss those days. I'd say the most engaging, though, what I've enjoyed the most is solution design. Complex, dynamic solution design for, even if it's a 3PL, if it's a shipper, if it's another supply chain servicer, just mapping out how to make an innovative, creative solution that supports their goals is probably the most rewarding.
So again, I said I had two questions. You're leading directly into my second question. So solution design and kind of looking at things in a consultative way obviously plays directly into what you guys are doing at Togo. So can you talk to us a little bit about what Togo is, what you guys do, who you help, and kind of how that all shakes out?
Yeah. So Togo, we're a supply chain resource group. And I don't know that there's many of them out there, but the reason we call ourselves a supply chain resource group is we are a guide for a supply chain node or a shipper to execute their supply chain in a more cost-effective and efficient way. And the 4 buckets that we kind of put our services into are analyze, design, connect, and execute. And what we do there is basically a broad spectrum of very base level consulting, all the way to designing that solution, helping them align with the right vendors or service type partners, and then actually executing it on their behalf as an integrated service provider. So it could be kind of a 4PL feel. In some cases, the company we're working with, especially in the startup and micro and intermediate size, they don't have the money to go out and invest in supply chain leadership or talent. Or maybe they really don't know quite what they need and they want to focus on their core competency. So we actually dedicate employees to them. In some cases, we become a part of their team and we're executing their supply chain. We're helping them design it. We're consulting along the way. The idea is to do this without them forfeiting any strategic control. So they have full transparency into what the design is. They can always interject. They get to determine who we use, how much we pay them, but we're really the people, process, and technology that they leverage. And it saves them a ton of money. It helps them scale sustainably without having to kind of put all that energy into building out the function. With the larger organizations, we're a little bit more focused into one aspect of the supply chain. It might be data entry, appointment setting, things like that. It could be higher level, actually, orchestrating a consolidation program, forward distribution program, vendor management, things like that. But the larger the organization, the more focused we tend to be. The smaller the organization, the more broad spectrum and all-encompassing we tend to be.
Got it. So I have a question for you. So the current business that you have with Togo, you decided to go out and found QuikSkope. What made you want to jump into the software space? Was it a need that you saw, or what drove you to start a software company?
Like I said, a lot of our customers are 3PLs or just trucking companies or warehouses. We're aligned with a lot of different organizations. We had also had a long history in the brokerage and transportation space. So we were familiar with the problem. I mean, double brokerage has been a thing for a long time. I think the correct term we're going to use is rebrokering, but it's double brokerage. I think the problem with double brokerage now is that before it was somebody just giving a load to a friend. It got delivered. The friend got paid. Nobody really spent too much time trying to prevent this. However, over the past 5 or 6 years, it's become much more harmful than that. Whereas cargo theft, you see the numbers kind of skyrocketing. You also see rebrokering, oftentimes resulting in the underlying carrier not being paid. People are being hurt by this. 3PL's reputations with their customers are being hurt. And the 3PLs that we were working with were just seeing it more and more and more. And it got to the point where it's like, how many times is this issue going to punch us in the face before we say, let's just do something about it? So myself and the team, we rented a house in the Poconos. We basically ideated it and came up with a bunch of different options for a weekend.
Nice.
Had a blast doing it. And this was kind of an idea based on a manual process that's being deployed already by 3PLs, just a better way to automate it and make it more secure. That was about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And we started working on the product. We then released it with some beta customers, people we have close relationships with. Ran it through there for about 3 months. And then I think we went to market about 6 months ago. So it was really just an issue that our clients had that we were very knowledgeable about, and we knew how to kind of solve for it from an operator's perspective. We just went for it.
How difficult has it been for you jumping in from your normal background, working in freight brokerage, to building a software company? I'm sure that's been a learning curve, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're not tech people, so we had to go out and surround ourselves with people that knew what they were doing. What we did know is instead of becoming, I guess, obsessive about the technology, we became obsessive about the process and how deployable it is as an operator. We kind of built around that. We probably had a month or two where we overspec'd. We got overzealous about all these bells and whistles, and this would be cool, and we could do that. And, the company that we work
Sounds
with,
familiar.
all the tech. Yeah, that's what we did go through that. But the hard part, I think, now is just understanding how difficult integrations can be. Not just having API or EDI, but understanding that becoming integrated with a partner, if it's not a customer, can be pretty cumbersome and time consuming, and you got to meet with a lot of people, you got to shake a lot of hands. So that's been a little bit challenging. I think just getting people to adopt it with a positive attitude can be difficult, especially when you're working with brokers. Getting brokers to use new technology is not the easiest thing. So we've dealt with some challenges, but we continue to press on. We're growing. We're doing pretty well. So no complaints, but it's definitely been a challenge.
Man, I love to hear these stories. So I want to kind of pick this apart a little bit more and get into the weeds a bit, because on the surface, it sounds like, QuikSkope's just another fraud protection tool, right? Just going to help against double brokering. However, in the conversations we've had before this, obviously what you guys are doing is a lot different than the carrier vetting tools. And just to be clear, I'm in no way saying that you're saying that those tools aren't great. What you're doing is actually a complement to them. You guys actually have two different purposes. So can you help everybody understand how your tool, QuikSkope, is different than the highways, the RMISs, the carrier assures, the carrier 411s, all those classic what I'll call pre-load fraud protection, and where your tool, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, is more like load level post-dispatch fraud protection. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like you said, if I'm a 3PL and I have a lot of experience doing that, if I'm focused on brokerage, the one thing I want to do right now is differentiate, because there's a bajillion brokers. I think the last statistic I saw from Brush Pass was the end of last year was something like 33,000 brokers. I think we're down to about 27,000, but that's still inflated versus pre-pandemic. And I would argue that it's way too saturated. So if you're a broker looking to grow in this environment, which is an extremely difficult, challenging freight market, I'm looking for ways to differentiate. I think one of the biggest ways to differentiate right now is to bring more security than your competition and present that to your customers. So, hey, Mr. Shipper, we have this, that, and the other to ensure that we're working with the right people, that your freight is secure. These are the protocols that we deploy. And if a negative event occurs or we encounter a bad actor, this is how we're going to catch it, and this is what we're going to do with that information. I think you're starting to see that transition, but it's not at a fast-paced one. I think what we're seeing now is that brokers are starting to investigate different vetting tools like RMIS or Highway. And they're great, and they're a necessity. You need to have them. What they do is they give you more accurate and more diverse data sets so that you can make a determination of what carrier to work with before you send them a rate confirmation, before you make a commitment. Their onboarding tools also work in kind of restricting what gets through so that your people at the next level can make decisions that are somewhat standardized, that they can't go outside that box. So they do a good job of that. The problem is that they're not a full protection. It's not hey, if I use those tools, I'm good to go as a 3PL. In fact, a lot of bad actors are still getting through. It's not necessarily the vetting platform's fault, but the basis of that data isn't always true. It's only as good as it was yesterday. And when it comes to a tight market, it's not going to help you get that load covered at the end of the day. So we said what we're missing to complement that is a tool that operates after the agreement with the carrier has been made. So most of our customers, and I would even advise this, that they might be using RMIS and they might say this carrier qualifies on paper. So I'm going to onboard them. They pass the onboarding process. Then I book the carrier. But after I book that carrier, I want to put a tool in place to make sure that if this is a bad actor that somehow filtered through, that this tool prevents them from getting access to the load. That's what QuikSkope does. So after the load, the agreement's made between the broker and the carrier, or the shipper and the carrier, QuikSkope is deployed. When the driver gets within a 2-mile radius of the shipper, they open a link, takes them to a secure portal. It asks them to take a picture of the side of the truck. It uploads their location. It geotags and timestamps everything. It cross-references it with the information provided by the TMS system, which is going to have a lot of that information that was included in the onboarding or the vetting tool. And it's going to make sure that that person is who you hired within the geolocation of that shipper. And if it clears, then that driver will receive the pickup information for the first pick via text message. It's pretty cool how it comes up. It has a whole screen, gives them the ability to upload documents, see all their pickup numbers for each shed laid out, and it adjusts to the language of the driver. So it's really to complement those vetting tools and make sure that once that load is booked, you have that additional layer of protection. There's some other bells and whistles and value propositions that we're building out for the future to kind of add more value inside the transaction after the load's booked and after the PODs are received. But a lot of that is next generation stuff.
Man,
that's a powerful tool. I mean, if you think about that, if it's integrated alongside with the other platforms out there like RMIS, like Highway, and you put this on top of that, you're not just qualifying, you're verifying, which is a powerful thing, in my opinion. Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I remember when I first heard the idea, obviously, you know who introduced us to each other, Mike. And I remember when I first heard it, not from you, I was like, oh, I don't really understand. And then when you and I talked, I was like, oh, damn, that's actually it makes a ton of sense. And it's because of your background as an operator, right? Like you actually understand what you're doing. And then when I saw the tool, it's just so, it's like most good ideas, right? I'm like, how come nobody's done this before, right? Like it seems so obvious that there was a gap that needed to be filled. And so I'm actually really excited for what you guys have built, and as you guys continue to evolve on it. Obviously y'all are passionate about it, and again, I think the most important part is that it's rooted in real life experience, right? And because you hear about that in the freight tech space all the time. We hear it from brokers specifically because that's who we talk to all the time. Any of these damn tech guys know how to run a brokerage? Have any of them ever brokered a load in their life, right? And it's funny, but it makes sense, right? Because ultimately, like, Cam, what does our client call it? IT cool.
IT cool, yeah.
He had this term.
We're
IT
guilty
cool.
of it.
Yeah, he said you have these tech companies that build shit that is like IT cool, but it's not actually cool to the end user, the operator. It's not actually useful, right? You guys don't actually have that problem, which is awesome because you guys are starting there. So as you scale out and add these new features and functions, hopefully you guys can stray away from building anything that's IT cool. Would you be open to sharing anything that you guys have on the horizon, or are you guys kind of trying to keep that close to chest?
No, sure. I mean, I think one of the things that we had in mind when we were building this was we're not going to design this for TQL or CH Robinson. We're not thinking about the large brokerage houses for a few reasons, but I think one of them is that I think what you're going to see over the next 10, 20 years is that there's going to be an emergence of brokerages that exist within the shipper, right? So an in-house logistics department or kind of a sister company that supports their business as the priority. I think you're also going to see the amount of agencies grow. You're going to see a lot of these brokers with skill from these large organizations leaving and starting an agency and taking their book with them. I think you're also going to see a lot of small shops succeed and grow and compete with those bigger players. 5, maybe more like 10 years ago, you had no chance competing against TQL or Robinson. But the field has leveled in terms of visibility to what's happening, information to make good decisions, access to carriers, access to technology. It's pretty level, especially when you're talking about truckload brokerage. So we wanted to make a tool that kind of fit that buyer, right? That small intermediate agent type company that won't have the money to go out and buy RMIS or Highway or the more expensive platforms, but still wanted that protection. And also give them the ability to consume it on a transactional level, because they're generally smaller teams. Their freight volumes are less predictable. They can't just absorb costs. They definitely just can't take losses. So being able to consume it on a transactional level, apply it inside that transaction, was a big key to how we're going to be positioning this in the future. Also, we have a few shippers that are working with us now, asking us to bring in some different elements to what we can do inside that transaction. So the next version is going to meet those two demands: the smaller, intermediate size broker, and then the shipper. And some of the things that we're talking about is being able to compensate the driver directly. So not actually going through the dispatcher, not actually putting anything on a rate con. I mean, any warehouse, shipper, anyone involved in the transaction, directly or indirectly, could compensate or tip the driver directly for doing things above and beyond. That was a shipper that gave us that idea.
Interesting.
And I thought it was really
idea.
interesting, because what he wanted was a bit more accountability at shipping and receiving, so that his customers who were charging him for OS&D that he didn't believe to be real, he wanted the driver to give him the ammunition to actually audit the process, which they will allow for. He just needs the information to do it. So that's one of the things that we want to bring into the picture. I think also things like seals, clean truck certs, just documentation that is specific and required before a load picks up in different states or delivers in different states, being able to bring that into the qualification or the verification process upstream. We're talking about a quick check-in process, because the carrier is verifying off-site. They're receiving the pickup number off-site, that they could actually check in off-site, kind of like you would for a restaurant reservation. That's going to mitigate a lot of the pressure and congestion at the shipper, probably going to help them out in terms of personnel. Also, the risk associated with a bunch of trucks coming in and out and people walking around. The driver's not going to eat into their logbooks. They can hang out at a truck stop, be less frustrated, at the shipper. So things like that add value to everyone involved inside the transaction in a very efficient and easy to use way is where we're headed.
That's really cool. I really like the idea of rewarding the driver with your app or through your app. And the reason I like that idea is I feel like there's so many applications out there now that drivers have to interact with. And the app fatigue, which we've all talked about many times, is, I'm sure, annoying for a lot of these drivers. But if there's some type of reward for it, or something that's going to actually drive them to use the application, I think that's a really positive thing. So I think that's a great idea. I like it a lot.
So we're excited about it. We got a lot of good feedback in the beginning from the carriers. And I've implemented 4Kites, Project 44, Trucker Tools, MacroPoint when it first came out. I mean, I've implemented these things for large 3PLs before. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge. The biggest challenge is getting the drivers to use it. That is the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
We really haven't run into that. In fact, I think the carriers specifically the drivers that are using this are liking it because they're recognizing that it protects them as much as it protects the broker. Every broker is verified that comes through the platform. So they're the ones that generally don't get paid. The driver's the one that's usually not a part of this fraudulent activity that's coming from a cyber criminal, usually in a different country or a different state from where the load picks up. And it protects them. So how do we continue to add value to those drivers that do like it and appreciate it, is part of the goal. Also, drivers are generally fined for not going above and beyond, and then it's generally a line item on a rate con that they might never even see. So instead of fining them, let's reward them. And as they start to do these extra above and beyond activities, it's essentially creating an internal resume for them. Here's how many times I've uploaded, a POD or a BOL, or I've taken a picture of the clean truck cert, or I've captured a picture of a cab card, or here's how many times I caught damage via video on the dock and able to save some money and protect himself. And being able to take that resume as a driver to potentially another MC or to a broker and say, I want your most difficult, high-paying freight. Here's why I deserve it, I think can create value to everyone.
Man, the way you just broke that down is so interesting because we look at incentivizing our employees, our internal teams all the time. Obviously, any good compensation plan is going to incentivize a behavior that you want, right? But you don't often hear that applied to a broker interacting with a carrier or a vendor.
It's usually the opposite.
Yeah,
you hear about
actually. Yeah, so that's a really interesting take on that because, look, I'm in sales. Obviously, incentives work, right? For people like me, you incentivize my behavior, I will do it, right? I will go where I am incentivized to go. So it's a really interesting take. Mike, this has been good. We've got only a couple minutes left, so I want to kind of start wrapping things up here. Look, you've been in the industry for a long time. Do you have like one big tip for anybody who's new to the logistics industry? What would be like the one thing you would tell someone trying to get into the space?
Other than run? No, I'm just kidding.
Don't
Just kidding.
Right?
Don't ask me that from a technology side.
I think you really got to be tenacious. You could probably insert patience there, but patience really isn't right for this industry. Everything happens now. And you have to be tenacious, regardless of the role that you're in, from the very entry level operations all the way up to the executive level. Most of your time is focused on exceptions or solving a problem. It's not like you create a product, you bring it to market, you have all the success, and maybe you evolve the product, maybe you evolve the marketing, or you introduce a new product. This is all about constantly proving your worth to your customers, whoever you're serving. And everything in this industry is now. If you're not tenacious and you don't go out and grab it, find the problem, solve for it before the next person, you're not going to do well. You can be the brightest mind in the world, but you have to be tenacious. I think that would be my biggest advice.
Yeah, one of the things that you said is it's nonstop, and everything is now, even on the technology side, which is sometimes really unfortunate because you have a lot of individuals that may not understand how long software engineering takes. But this industry is not built for those who are looking for downtime in their job. Yeah. It's not, hey, I'm going to do 2 tasks and then it's 20 minutes on my next task. If you're working like that, you're not going to last in this industry. It really is all aspects of it across the board, nonstop execution and delivering for the client. Exactly. If you're not, you're going to fail. And, that's right. And that's really what it is. And I've only been in the industry for 13 years, since 2011. And everything you just said resonates with me. I feel it every day.
Yeah.
So,
well, Mike, we appreciate the insights and love hearing about what you're doing. Where do people find you? How do people get in touch with you if they want to talk a little bit more about your services and maybe, contract with y'all and do some work together?
Yeah. harnesstogo.com. Harness like a dog. Harness Togo, TOGO.com. That's where you're going to find the supply chain resource group. And then QuikSkope.com, QuikSkope.com. That's where you're going to find our software product. You can reach out to any of us at LinkedIn, or just go to those websites and they'll have a contact us for them. You can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn and I'll respond.
Awesome. Well, Mike, we appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much. And we're looking forward to see where QuikSkope goes and what you continue to do at Togo.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Mike.
Mike.
Appreciate you.
Man, it's always interesting seeing how many different technology companies are arising and what people think of and what they're
Totally.
delivering and how it's used. It's always just so fascinating to me how many different things you can solve just nonstop.
There's so many. Well, I called them this morning ancillary products, right, which support the main mission, but
Yeah.
each one of them is so critical. That's why you see tools like ours that kind of aggregate all of these, focused tools that are focused on one specific aspect of the supply chain, and they kind of all come together into one. It's really cool. I think what they're doing is awesome.
Yeah, it's really sweet. I'm looking forward to seeing how they grow it. Obviously, still a young tech company, so with that being their starting idea, I'm sure they're going to deliver a lot of cool things into the future. So that's
absolutely awesome. What's going on this weekend, man? What are you doing?
Taking care of the kids' frogs.
Oh yeah.
No, my brother's coming up for a barbecue, so I'm going to see him, and that's pretty much it. What about you?
Speaking of barbecue, I need to buy meats for the 4th of July.
Meats. You're gonna smoke some meats?
Multiple meats will be smoked starting on the night of July 3rd into July 4th. I think we're doing a brisket and probably just some like baby back ribs, nothing crazy. But
no Beyond Meat?
No, never. Don't do that.
A brisket made out of Beyond Meat?
Probably 25 pounds of meat between the brisket and the ribs. So it'll be it'll be a good time. Come on up, man. Come through.
I'll be in the boo.
You're gonna be in the boo camping. So we're not doing next Friday, right?
No, next Friday we are both gonna be out of office. So the following Friday, do we have anyone coming on the following Friday?
I don't have it scheduled, but we'll sort that out. We've got some travel coming up the week after the 4th as well. So but yeah, no, it's we'll take a week off. So we'll see everybody in 2 weeks, I guess. And on that note, I guess everybody have a good 4th of July. You got anything else, Cam, before we sign off?
Nope. I hope everyone has a good 4th of July, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.